Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome to Threshold of Hope. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa, and I just want to mention real briefly, today Jesuits are celebrating one of our blessed, Father or Brother Francisco Ngarate. He was a Spaniard, and he entered the Jesuits a little bit later in life. He couldn't do much schooling, but he just became a very, very holy man, and his work was answering the door. And you know, it's very interesting. There are a lot of saints whose job was just answering the door, including Saint Faustina Kowalska. That was her job. And the patience they learned doing a very simple task, and the charity they showed helped them become saints doing a very simple task. And all of us can learn, you know, that sometimes doing the simple tasks can make us holy. All right, we are still going through Fides et Ratio, and you can get a paperback copy from EWTN's Religious Catalog. Online, go to EWTN Religious Catalog, it's all one word, .com. Or you can call 1-800-854-6316. Another option, of course, is you can download a free electronic copy of this document, which is called Fides et Ratio. Go to the document library. It's on, hit the Faith tab, you'll see document library, type in Fides et Ratio and John Paul II, and you can download that. Our website is EWTN.com. Now, of course, we'd love to have you be involved and participate in our show. You can do like these nice folks have come all the way to Birmingham or Irondale, Alabama. Or you can send us a question by writing to threshold@EWTN.com. Or you can call us during the live broadcast, which is Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And the phone number is 1-800-221-9460. Or if you're here in Birmingham, or if you are outside the country, you can call 205-271-2980. All right, we are now presently on paragraph 19. And again, this is part of a section reflecting on the wisdom literature in the Bible. And he's especially going to be emphasizing the Book of Wisdom, which is not a really large book. I urge you to read it, especially the first 9 chapters, if you get a chance. It's a wonderful book. I love it. And one of the things he brings up is that in the Book of Wisdom, the author speaks of God who reveals himself in nature. Now, this is something very important. A lot of us love to get away from large human habitations and get out to nature during vacations. That's a very enjoyable thing to do. And it gives us great perspective. And it's very important to get children, take your families out to go see nature and appreciate it, and not just live in a concrete jungle or even a sod-covered suburb, but to get out to where nature is. And there we can learn some things about God. Now, ancient people saw the study of the natural sciences as coinciding with philosophy. As a matter of fact, you see that Aristotle's works include studies of nature. One of the advantages Aristotle had over many of the other philosophers is that his student, his most famous student, was Alexander the Great. And or as we like to call him, In my neighborhood in Chicago, Big Al. But Alexander the Great conquered so many places, and he would send specimens of different plants and animals for Aristotle to study. So he saw that this was very much part of philosophy. And having affirmed that with their intelligence, human beings are able to do what it says in Wisdom 7:17 and through 20. It is God who gave me unerring knowledge of what exists, to know the structure of the world and the activity of the elements, the cycles of the year, and the constellations of the stars, the natures of animals, and the tempers of wild beasts, the powers of spirits, and the reasonings of men, the varieties of plants, and the virtues of roots. So that these are all the areas where God gives us a mind to understand. This is marvelous. And as some scientists have pointed out quite well, we live on a planet that is far enough away from the sun not to get burned up, but not so far that we freeze to death, and that our solar system is about 2/3 of the way outside of the Milky Way galaxy. If our solar system were at the center, there would be so much light at the center of the galaxy, we could never know that there were other galaxies. But because we're far enough away, we're able to study. And what we believe is that it's not just an accident. Now, somebody like Carl Sagan, a very famous atheist and physicist, who did wonderful education about physics and astronomy. I have nothing but the highest respect for his ability to educate people. But he thought, we just live on and it's one of his lines, we live on a mediocre sun, in a mediocre galaxy, about 2/3 of the way out, no big deal. No big deal. What a great place to have creatures who have minds that like to learn things and are able to learn things. Again, as you've heard me say many times, when my cats have finished eating, they don't go and study botany in the backyard. They fall asleep. Now, I've had some students like that too, but that's another problem. But human beings are what are the names of these plants? What do they do? The cats just wonder, are there things to eat or not? And that's about it. They have limited knowledge. Or where are the mice? Where are the mice? That's what they want to know when they're hungry. So this means that humans, unlike the animals, are able to philosophize. We can think. And the sacred text of the Bible takes a significant step forward. In the book of Wisdom, the author uses Greek philosophy. He's well aware of it. And he incorporates especially a late Platonic type of philosophy. He's interested in the writings of Plato's students. And he sometimes refers to these different things, different philosophers in his text. But he affirms, and this is what Scripture says, that when we reason about nature, we are able to rise up and learn about God. So in Wisdom 13, verse 5, it says, "For from the greatness and beauty of created things comes a corresponding perception of their Creator." And this is one of the great reasons for Christians to learn as much as they can about nature. You find out, and this is whether you study the magnificence of the galaxies and the cosmos, or if you get a super microscope and go down to the tiniest, or to the subatomic, or to the biological, because either way you say, what amazingly beautiful things God has made. And the intricacy goes to this vastness and to the most tiny. And all of it is interesting to us because of the minds that we have. This means that we recognize as the first stage of divine revelation, the marvelous, quote, book of nature. Nature itself is like a book. And it tells us something that the Creator cares about, the vastness and the most minute tininess, that we existed long before anybody knew about atoms, yet alone subatomic particles. Think of how many millennia human beings have lived not knowing that. But, now we discovered, and that enriches us. So the book of nature teaches us, and it's like a revelation. But and we use it with the proper tools of human reason. We use scientific method. And this is a great gift of the human mind. And that use of human reason can give us knowledge of the Creator. More so than just, again, I'm limited in scientific ability, to be sure. I can observe the beauty of the mountains and the sea, etc. But, I can stand back and admire the research of those who are true scientists and try to learn a little bit of what they know. And if also, pay attention, one of the things about human reason, there's so much to learn that most physicists don't have time to study biology in detail anyway. The people who are focused on biology don't do much physics. There's just so much to know and learn that they spend their lives in these areas, and that they depend on experts in other areas because of the vastness of what God has created. Now, if humans, with all of their intelligence, fail to recognize God as the creator of everything, it is not because they lack the means to do so, but because their free will and their sinfulness place an impediment in the way. That is something very important. I remember a cartoon by a character called Ziggy. And all it is small Ziggy with this huge, beautiful sunset painted behind. And he's standing there yelling, "Author, author." That should be the natural response. But sometimes in our pride, we don't give God the credit for the beauty around us. So reason has tremendous value, but we don't want to overvalue it and say that's all that there is. This was the mistake of the 1700s, a period that called itself the Enlightenment, because they said we don't need religion, we just have our own reason. And how did they show that? After the French Revolution started, they went into Notre Dame Cathedral, they dressed up a prostitute, called her reason, put her on the main altar, and then went about to proceed to commit lewd acts throughout the church and desecrate the church. Now, I don't consider that reasonable, but that's how they celebrated reason, because they were celebrating reason out of the distortion of sin. And they wanted to use their arrogance. We'll show you. It's not Notre Dame, the Blessed Mother, the Virgin Mother of God, whom we celebrate. We celebrate the prostitute dressed up, and we'll call her reason. But does that not mean that you think that your reason is able to be prostituted? And in fact, did they not go from there and soon after begin a reign of terror, distorting their use of reason? So this is something that we want to understand better, that the results of reason are true. What we learn in science is telling us true facts, given that they're using honest means and all that, and that they're getting partial truth and learning more and more. They're always improving, God willing, and they'll continue to do that. We encourage that. But all the results of reason acquire the true meaning only if they are set in the larger horizon of faith. That faith, when he uses this term, think of the horizon. The horizon is as far as you can see. That's the end of where you can see. On our planet, because of the curvature of the earth. And that just forms a horizon, or the mountains or whatever other object might be in the way. But if you're on the ocean, the curvature of the earth marks the horizon. That's as far as you can see. Well, we can see intellectually that faith gives us a horizon for how far we can see. And he quotes here Proverbs 20, verse 24. A man's steps are ordered by the Lord. How then can man understand his way? Now, that is a very profound proverb. How many people really understand what they're getting into when they make a free will choice, a decision well thought out and pondered to go get married? I've not met any older married couples that said, oh yes, everything went exactly as we planned it. Even the ones in the middle of life are shaking their heads. It's a surprise, isn't it? And it's a good set of surprises. I mean, there are difficulties, but you don't know what you're getting into. I took my vows after 2 years as a novice. I was ordained after 12 years of study. Do you think I still understood all that was going to happen to me? Of course not. Of course not. That's human life. So that it's hard for us to understand our ways. And sometimes we don't understand what things we went to until later in life. I said, oh, now this makes sense. Now I get it. And things that surprise us. Now, in the Old Testament, we see that faith liberates reason. It doesn't stop reason. It helps give it a broader horizon. Because faith allows reason to attain correctly what it seeks to know. So that you need faith to know the ultimate source, namely God. And so this is where faith helps reason and liberates it. And it also helps to place reason within the ultimate order of things. That knowing stuff isn't the only element of being human. You can know all kinds of facts and figures, but that's not the core of being human. That's the core of being a computer. A human does much more than know data. A human makes sense out of life, and faith helps us to put that in order so that we get the true meaning of things. Not just we get things, but why does it exist? What's its purpose? This is where faith comes in. So humans are able to attain truth by way of reason. Reason really does help us get to the truth. But it does so because reason is enlightened by faith, and then people discover the deeper meaning of things, especially, and this is most important, they find the meaning of their own existence. I was listening to an atheist on the internet. I went to a website, and she was saying, I've had 3 deaths of people very close to me. And people were saying that they're praying for me and for my family members that died and all this. And, this just makes you think. Because one of the problems, without God, death doesn't have meaning. You can, don't believe me, believe philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and others. Death, matter of fact, he found life so meaningless without God that he said, through my whole life as an adult, I struggled against committing suicide. Though, on his deathbed, Sartre came back to his Catholic faith. But this is what we want to do, is find out the meaning of our existence. That's why we see in Scripture, in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And as we saw a week or 2 ago, the fool says in his heart there is no God. That in Psalm 14. Also in Sirach chapter 1, verse 14. To fear the Lord is wisdom's full measure. She satisfies men with her fruits. And that's, there's a certain element, like I said, why fear? See, a lot of moderns don't like fear the Lord. Oh, I want to be buddies with the Lord. At least I think back on my dad. My dad loved us, but he made it clear, I'm your father, not your friend. Make your own friends. I'm the only father you're ever going to get. And later in life, we became friends. But early on, it was clear, you'll do it because I said so. And, that when the arguments came to a close, that was the bottom line argument. And you had a fear of him, though you knew he loved you. And then you learn from him that you don't walk out in the street because the cars will hit you, and lots of other things. And that makes sense later as you grow into love. But fear is a start. And then it goes on from the same thing with our relationship with God. Now, paragraph 21 begins with a quote from Proverbs 4, verse 5, where it says, do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Get wisdom, get insight. Great admonition of a father to a son in Proverbs 4, verse 5. Now, the Old Testament sees that knowledge is not just a matter of careful observation. Like scientists very carefully observe life in reality, and that's good. Again, we commend that. But that's not the only kind of knowledge that you get about the world, about history. And one of the things that we see is that there's an indispensable link with faith and with what has been revealed. That helps you understand. Now, that's true in science too. How many scientists feel a need to say, I can't trust Sir Isaac Newton. I'm going to prove all over again that there's gravity. No, they take it for granted. You say, can you prove to me that 2 + 2 = 4? Or if you're in the Common Core, 2 + 2 = 5? So long as you can show why you think that. That was on a video, by the way. It was 7 + 7 = 13. Obviously, the nun who taught me was not on that. They said, if you help them understand the reasoning process. I know the reasoning process, and that's simple. It's called guessing. Done it many a time. to my chagrin. Now, the challenges that the chosen people of Israel had to confront and to which they had to respond are using the knowledge in the light of revelation. Okay? The ancient people in the Bible times had to ponder this situation, and they discovered that that each person could understand himself or herself only as being in a relationship. This is very important for the biblical mentality. You're in a relationship with yourself, with other people. You didn't get here by yourself. You didn't decide to create yourself. You didn't make your own soul. You didn't conceive yourself. You're in relationship with other people, necessarily. And you're in relationship with the world. And you are in relationship with God. All these relationships are key. And that we open up to mystery that comes in Revelation. And for people in the Bible, in the very end of things, Revelation was the source of the truest knowledge. And this allowed reason to enter the realm of the infinite, to go beyond their own limitations, so they can get an understanding for which until then they had not dared to hope there'd be a possibility. In other words, as they learned from Revelation, because in the Bible, revelation is gradual. Just like revelation throughout all of the individual's life is gradual. You first learn, don't get in the street unless I take you there. And then you learn how to look both ways. And then you learn how to drive in the street and watch for the kids who are not looking both ways. You gradually learn the various things in life. So also in the Bible, there's a gradual growth. And as time goes on, not at the beginning, but through development, they begin to see that there's more than this life, and that there's eternal life. And this gradually came to them, and that was very much part of their search for the truth. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll come back. We want to get your questions, those from our studio audiences, as well as your emails. So please stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. And first I want to invite you to come and be part of our studio audience. If you can make a pilgrimage down here, please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. Or you can also go to our website, www.EWTN.com, for information about scheduling of masses, programs, and places to stay and all that. And we even have one lady here from Alaska. We'll certainly hope that she gets a chance to have some fried green tomatoes and all that good food that you probably don't get up there. Just like we don't get any seal blubber down here. And of course, I also want to invite you to join me in a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. We're planning to go on December 15th until the 26th. And the number you can call is 1-800-554-4556. That's 1-800-554-4556. Or go to my website, Pacwa.SJ, and get information there about the pilgrimage. Now, it was really wonderful this past Saturday when Pope Francis led a prayer vigil at the St. Peter's Square, praying for peace in Syria. You know, it was wonderful to watch. There were over 100,000 people there, and including a number of Muslim religious leaders, Eastern Orthodox religious leaders, bishops, priests, and of course, the majority would have been Catholic. And you know, I watched it and joined in the praying on Saturday, praying for peace in Syria. Now, I got to admit, I'm watching the news, and there's a certain element of our own politicians are running around, but, you know, when Mr. Kerry, our Secretary of State, made a gaffe, somebody asked him, well, what would be a way to prevent attacking Syria? I said, well, if they gave up all of their chemical weapons to international control. And then Mr. Putin called and said, oh, I think I can do that. And Kerry's people said, oh, no, that was just a mistake. But now they're saying, maybe that's a good idea. And I think we want to pray that a more peaceful means of stopping an increase of violence and our own participation in it is a good thing. We want to see, and not only that we don't get involved, we truly want to see peace for the people of Syria. 100,000 and more have been killed already. And it's not easy to find good guys on either side. You know, I don't find anybody there. I say, oh yeah, I'd vote for them. We want to pray for everybody to settle down and God's peace to help out with that. So that's very important, very important. All right, let's take a call. We have Rosanna online. Hello, Rosanna.
Hi, Father Mitch. How are you?
Fine. Where are you from?
I'm Oak Brook, Illinois.
Where?
Oak Brook.
Oak Brook.
Illinois.
Illinois. Oh, great. And what's your question?
Okay, Father, I have this situation. We are practicing Catholic. I have 4 kids, 1 daughter, and my daughter is in college dating this guy from Pakistan that he's Muslim. And, you know, my husband and I, we are very worried, concerned, and we get into a lot of fights and confrontations. And he accused us of not being good Catholics because we are supposed to embrace all people and religion. But we don't know what to advise her or what to do in this situation. She's 23. She's going to be done with college. So is him in December. And she's talking about, you know, Allah being the same God that we are, that they believe in the Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost. And I said, Stephanie, it's not right. I know I'm not very knowledgeable about the Muslim religion, but I know that it's not the same belief that we have, this doctrine. And she's telling me this, that one of the two has to convert in order to, you know, raise the kids, and so in one religion, so we are terrified.
Yep, couple things. On a certain one level, have your daughter investigate the status of women in his form of Pakistani Islam, okay? Because in Pakistan, there are a number of sects of Islam. And that's one of the reasons why you see almost every week that one or other mosque gets blown up by somebody from a different sect. You know, tragically, most terrorism by Muslims is committed against other Muslims. They're the biggest victims of Muslim terrorism. And so find out what sect he is, what is the status of a wife, does he intend to have more than one wife, what rights does she have to the children if something happens to the marriage? Because in Islamic law, she has no rights to the children. None. It's all the husband's rights, especially if she's not Muslim. But even if she becomes a Muslim, she does not have rights to the children if they get a divorce. So find these things out. Secondly, don't let this man say false things about his beliefs. Ask him, did Jesus Christ die on the cross? And if he knows the Quran, he knows that in Surah 4, verse 157, it denies that Jesus was crucified. Also, what you're going to want to do basically, Rosanna, I want you to go to my website, fathermitchpacwa.org. And I have a number of CDs. And one of them is Islam and Christianity. Ask your daughter and this young man to listen to it. Because it's not I alone. It is I and a Muslim convert who discuss these things. And also listen to the one on the Eucharist, Mary, and Islam, because one of the questions I ask frequently, they don't, in the Quran, it does not mention Jesus. That is not what is in there. What they have is the word Isa. Now, they call him Isa ibn Maryam, Isa the son of Mary. And the English translations will say Jesus. That is not the word for Jesus in Arabic. In Arabic, Jesus is Yeshua, Yeshua, which is backwards pronounced Isa. Yes, Isa is Yeshua backwards. And the word Isa in ancient language means to be covered with hair. Jesus means he will save. This is not just playing games with letters. This is about the very nature of who Jesus Christ is. So this Isa ibn Maryam, Isa the son of Mary, I don't know who he is, but he is not Jesus Christ. Also, Maryam bint Imran, Mary is the daughter of Imran. Who's Imran? Imran is, from the Old Testament, the father of Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. So, what does this have to do with the Mary of the New Testament? These are not the same. They are not the same. Now, there are many values that we have in common with Muslims. But don't let him say things that are false about the teaching of the Quran, about Miriam and Isa. We are going to stay, and this is where your daughter has to make a decision. Will she continue to believe that Jesus is the Savior who died for the sins of the world, or will she accept Islam and deny not only that he is God the Son, but that he died for our sins? Because the Quran denies both. And you have to make a decision. That's why it's important to know clearly what is taught. And not just play games. Oh, it looks like this. No, it's different. And you make a decision which one of these is true. As I said to one Muslim from Hamas, In the Quran, it says Jesus didn't die on the cross. Mary, his mother, says she saw him die. Do I believe Mary, who watched her son die? Or do I believe the Quran 600 years later says it didn't happen? Okay, we have a question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
Fayetteville, Georgia.
Would you hold the microphone up there and now say that?
Fayetteville, Georgia.
Fayetteville, Georgia. Good to have you here. And what's your question?
Well, I was thinking about what you said about faith and reason, and it makes sense that you can't just have reason, you really need the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't somebody say once that you need faith and reason are the two wings that help you ascend to God?
Yeah, I don't know that quote, but it sounds good to me. I mean, you might even have thought of that yourself. But it could be somebody that I'm not aware of. But you see, for instance, I've just been looking at some of the writings of St. Augustine. St. Augustine said, crede ut intelligas, believe so that you might understand. But then he says later, intellige ut credas, understand so that you might believe. So that we need the both. And again, you have a very important point to think that you cannot prove that reason is reasonable. Because you have to use reason to prove it. And that's tautology. You make an act of faith that reason is reasonable. You look back on experience and say yes to that. And trust that reasonable people are correct in using reason. But you can't prove it. Same thing with scientific method. You can't prove scientific method because you have to use the scientific method to prove it. And that's tautology. But you believe it, I believe it. So there's faith in that too. We have another caller. Hello, Carl.
Hello, Father Mitch.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. We met about almost 10 years ago. You, me, and Rosalind Moss were talking at one point at a Jewish roots of Catholicism.
Right. I remember that conference.
Okay. Anyway, let me just ask my question real quick, and I'll take your answer off the air.
Sure.
I can't remember whether or not it's in Gaudium et Spes or Lumen Gentium, but there is this one. There's this one passage that says something about we must do all that's necessary to help attain just wages for the poor, or fair working conditions for workers, or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's basically how I remember it. It was presented to you as a question here a couple of months ago on your EWTN live, or your call-in program on the radio. Yes. I was just wondering if you could illuminate me on that.
Right. Here's one of the things. I don't know the quote off the top of my head. I'll try to look it up if I can. But it is important to use all the means possible to seek justice for those who are in need. However, you can't use any means possible because you don't justify the means by the end. You can't say, oh, I mean to do something very good for the poor, so I will decapitate all the rich people and share their stuff with the poor. No, that's not valid. Just like, and you see that principle in so much else. I had a man complain on my show, how come you Catholics are against using embryonic stem cells? Right, because I cannot kill somebody else to get their body parts, no matter how small they are. I can't kill an adult to get a kidney or a heart, and I can't kill an embryo to get their stem cells. Because the end, that is, my good health, does not justify the means of killing an innocent person. I can get what has turned out to be scientifically the more useful adult stem cells of people with their permission and their generosity. And I can, if somebody wants to donate a kidney, that's fine, but I can't steal it from them. And this principle that you don't justify the means by the end is very important, including in helping the poor. But there are plenty of very good means for helping the poor. And one of the things that we have to think about, what do we want for the poor? In this country, one of the, as a matter of fact, the biggest reason for poverty is unwed motherhood. The children of unwed mothers and the mothers are the bulk of our poor. And they're a growing population. For instance, now 43% of all children in the country are born to unwed mothers. Now, one of the things you want to do is help young women to make that connection. You know, some of them have said, there's a group of girls at a high school in Massachusetts said, oh, let's all get pregnant together for our senior year. And, or girls will say, well, I want to have a baby so I have somebody to love me. Buy a puppy. It won't go through adolescent rebellion as badly as a kid will. And it house trains faster than a kid. And if you really want to house train fast, get a cat. They're even better. So, you know, use sense. And they're cheaper than kids. So, you know, this is one of the things you have to help people say, finish school, get married, and cooperate as a man and a woman in raising the children you conceive. And work together. And this will be a big means to ending poverty. Simple. Simple. And there are other things, all kinds of other things we can do. Job training, opening up good schools as opposed to the government-run schools. The government-run schools in places like Detroit are a disaster, but not only there, around the country. It's just that Detroit has collapsed. So this is one of the things we want to do. Find all kinds of legitimate means where we don't take from somebody else, but we give of ourselves to help the poor. That's the key. All right. Let's take an email. Dear Father Mitch, recently I had a priest tell me that it is bad theology to believe that God punishes us. I know that God is all-loving and merciful. However, it seems very clear, especially in reading the Old Testament, that God does punish us when we repeatedly disobey. This priest said that we bring on our own punishment, that we set ourselves up for it, but God is not the one who punishes. Seems to me that in God's love, there is also justice, and unless he does punish us for disobedience, where is there justice? Does justice come only in the afterlife? The people in Sodom and Gomorrah did not create the fire raining down on them. God punished them. Perhaps by telling people that God does not punish us. This is why so many think so lightly about their sins in this world today. This is from Gail. Well, Gail, the priest that you're talking about is trying to make a good point. God's mercy is greater than his justice. However, it's not only in the Old Testament. Take a look at Matthew 25. Matter of fact, the whole of Matthew 25, where you see that the foolish virgins without the oil, the door is locked. Now you can say they punished themselves, but the bridegroom locked the door from the inside. And you can say that the three guys with the talents, the guy who hid the talent, he was cast out. And it was the master that said, cast him out. And in the Lucan version, it says, not only cast him out, but now bring before me all the rebels and I will killed him, cut him in half. And he says that also, by the way, in Matthew 24, Jesus speaks about those who are leaders in the church, who are irresponsible. They will be cut in 2 pieces. Now, they're not doing that to themselves. I'm here to tell you. And then also, in separating the sheep from the goats, it's Christ who separates the sheep from the goats in Matthew 25, 31 and following. You see over and over again in the parables that Christ speaks about how the angels will gather the good into God's barns and the wicked will be cast out into the everlasting flames. They don't go there saying, oh boy, we get to burn. No, they get cast into the fires of Gehenna, where the worm dies not and the flame goes out. So, Gail, I think you have a good point. And that a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to follow Walt Disney theology. Now look where that got that young woman, Miley Cyrus. But, I'm going to follow Walt Disney theology where all dogs go to heaven, part 1 and part 2. Well, try it. But let me just think a little bit. If you're going to follow that kind of Walt Disney theology, then follow the life of a number of their Disney stars. Not only Miley Cyrus. Oh, there's a whole bunch of them who have gone from bad to worse. And Disney hasn't done them any service. I don't think it'll do anybody else who follows their all dogs go to heaven theology as well. Another email. Dear Father Mitch, my daughter-in-law's father has taught her that there is no God, no Jesus, etc. He calls himself an agnostic but has no faith in God. Well, why does he call himself an agnostic? He apparently seems to know that there is no God. Anyway, he taught this to my daughter-in-law from a very young age. Her mother is a Christian, but apparently since she is very close to her father, she believes him. His parents are very devout Catholics, and he stopped believing in God at a very young age. Is my daughter-in-law responsible? I would think that her father is the one who will answer to God because he was brought up by very devout Catholics who fought with him for years but finally gave up. I know they're praying for him, and I am also. My son is Catholic. This is my whole family. Anything I can do besides praying for them. Phyllis in Pennsylvania. Well, Phyllis, for being taught poorly by a father who loves his daughter, which is the thing that dads should do. Dads, of course, love their daughters, and daughters love their dads. And that's great. And she trusts him. But he sounds more intelligent than the mother. And the dad probably has said that at different times about the mother of this young girl. So she's not responsible for that. But she is responsible for not taking the words of an agnostic. And remember, the word agnostic is a Greek word. Gnosis means knowledge. Agnosis means not knowledge, or what we would call, using the Latin root, ignorant. So here you have a man who says there's no God and brags in Greek about being ignorant. Now, why would she follow someone who boasts about being ignorant in denying God's existence? I want to recommend to you a book for her to consider. It's called The Last Superstition by Dr. Edward Feser, F-E-S-E-R, The Last Superstition. It is a wonderful, wonderful refutation of the ignorant, that is to say, atheists and agnostics, and shows the reasons to believe in God clearly, wonderfully, and intellectually, and see if that helps. And then, of course, continuing to pray like St. Monica did for her husband, Patricius, a pagan, and her son, Augustine, a cult member who was caught up into lust. All right. May the Lord bless you and keep you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And again, this network is brought to you by you. We can't do this without your help. So please keep us in between your gas bill, your electric bill, and your cable bill, because we have a lot of bills to pay too. Thank you.